Have you ever wondered how someone can remain calm and compassionate when faced with insults and violence? Join us in the miraculous story of the elder Punna, who lived in a land full of challenges, faced with ridicule and violence, yet remained unshaken. By the end of this video, you will understand the secrets to overcoming suffering without attachment, along with precious lessons on compassion and wisdom in Buddhist teachings. In this video, we will explore the life and spiritual journey of the elder Punna, one of the famous disciples of the Buddha. Through the story, the Buddha taught truths about impermanence, non-self, and suffering, three fundamental elements of the Four Noble Truths he wished to convey. Elder Punna, with his deep compassion and wisdom, understood that all sensations arising from the six senses could be the source of suffering if not controlled. From there, he let go of attachments and achieved a state of absolute peace. The Buddha not only taught about facing desires, but also helped us understand that all emotions, from joy to suffering, are results of attachment. If we no longer cling to what we see, hear, and feel, then suffering will also vanish. This is not just theory, but was demonstrated by the way Elder Punna dealt with the harsh and rude people of Sunaparanta. Even when insulted, beaten, or even threatened with death, the elder maintained his compassion and inner peace. He did not retaliate or harbor resentment, but thought, "It is good, for they have done nothing worse." This is the spirit of fearless compassion, a valuable lesson on how to maintain a calm mind in the harshest situations. Through this story, we will realize that practicing Buddhism is not just about studying scriptures, but also about living according to what we have understood. Look at the life of Elder Punna. He chose to face brutality with compassion and patience. He is a shining example for us all to follow in our daily lives. The story of Elder Punna, the secret to staying calm amidst life's storms. At that time, in the Kida garden on a peaceful afternoon, the Buddha was meditating under the cool shade of trees. The tranquil space, only disturbed by the gentle wind rustling through the leaves, sounded like a natural symphony amidst the serene scenery. The soft golden rays of the late-day sun shimmered on the ground, illuminating every gentle step of Elder Punna as he emerged from his solitary meditation, approaching the Buddha. The elder's steps were light yet firm, as if each step carried concentration and reverence. His face radiated kindness and his eyes bright, yet they also reflected the contemplation of someone who had practiced for many years. As he neared the Buddha, the elder respectfully bowed and then quietly sat down to one side, looking up at him with immense respect. In that quiet space, the voice of Elder Punna rose, soft yet sincere. "Venerable Buddha, I pray that you grant me a brief teaching. After hearing it, I will live alone in tranquility, without frivolity, earnestly and diligently." The Buddha, with eyes of compassion and a voice as warm as it was imbued with the understanding of an enlightened being, responded, "So it shall be, Punna. Listen carefully and reflect, and I will teach you." Elder Punna nodded obediently and respectfully. "Yes, Venerable Buddha." From there, the Buddha clearly and profoundly explained the human senses, his voice steady and warm as the rhythm of a scripture. Each teaching carried the energy of awakening, deeply imprinting in the elder's mind. "Punna, there are forms recognized by the eye, desirable, pleasurable, linked to desire, attractive. If a monk delights, praises, and dwells in them, attachment arises, and from there, suffering begins." The Buddha's words were like clear streams, gently flowing into the consciousness of Elder Punna. He spoke not only of what the eyes could see, but also of sounds, scents, tastes, sensations, and thoughts. All could give rise to desire if the mind is not kept tranquil. But if there is no delight, no praise, no attachment, then the desire fades and suffering also ends. Hearing these teachings, Elder Punna felt awakened, his mind clearer, understanding the path he must continue on. When the Buddha asked where the elder would live after receiving the teachings, he replied with firm determination, "Venerable Buddha, I will live in the land of Sunaparanta." The Buddha paused, contemplating the land that the elder would go to. He looked deeply into Punna's eyes, his voice becoming more solemn. "Punna, the people of Sunaparanta are violent. If they insult and abuse you, what will you think?" Without hesitation, Elder Punna replied with a firm voice, his eyes exuding calmness, "Venerable Buddha, if they insult me, I will think, 'It is good, for they have not beaten me.'" The Buddha continued to pose increasingly difficult scenarios, each escalating the level of adversity the elder would face, from being beaten to being stoned to being threatened with a knife. But Punna, with steadfast spirit, answered calmly each time, demonstrating his compassion and fearlessness more clearly. Finally, when asked about if the people of Sunaparanta were to take a sharp knife to his life, Elder Punna, with a gentle smile and bright eyes, responded, "Venerable Buddha, if that were to happen, I would think, some people seek a sharp knife to end their lives out of despair, but now I do not need to search, for they have brought the knife to me." The Buddha looked at Punna with satisfaction, his eyes gentle and approving. Well said, Punna. You have mastered subjugation and tranquility. Live according to the enlightenment you have achieved." After joyfully receiving the Buddha's teachings, Elder Punna stood up, respectfully bowed, and departed. He left with his alms bowl on his shoulder, heading straight towards Sunaparanta, where challenges awaited, but his heart was undisturbed. In Sunaparanta, the elder lived among a famously violent people, but thanks to his tranquility and diligence, he persuaded and converted many. Even during the rainy retreat, Punna gained hundreds of male and female lay followers and achieved the three knowledges, reaching complete liberation. When news of Elder Punna's passing reached them, a group of monks asked the Buddha about his fate after death. The Buddha, with a gentle smile, replied, "Punna was a wise and virtuous sage. He practiced the Dharma perfectly. Now, Punna has entered nirvana." This final note echoed in the hearts of the monks, like a gentle melody closing the story of a great sage who brought the light of Dharma to a remote and challenging land. Lessons. The story of Elder Punna and his journey to the land of Sunaparanta is not just a tale of courage, steadfastness, and compassion, but it also contains deep lessons in Buddhist teachings. Through the brief teachings of the Buddha and how the elder received them, we can draw metaphorical truths about life and the path of practice. Lesson on impermanence and non-self. In life, everything is constantly changing. Nothing is permanent. From the smallest things that we perceive through the six senses, sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch, and thought, all can give rise to feelings of pleasure and attachment. But these sensations are not stable and always change. The Buddha taught that everything related to desire leads to suffering. Attachment, even to a small moment of joy, leads to suffering when we cannot obtain what we desire, or when what we desire changes. Similarly, non-self, the essence of not having a fixed self, is clearly demonstrated by how Elder Punna faced all insults and beatings. The elder was no longer attached to personal sensations, did not consider himself the center of what was happening. He let go of the ego, did not react with anger, but instead accepted everything with calmness and wisdom. Lesson on suffering and the path to its cessation. Elder Punna clearly understood the nature of suffering through training and practicing the Dharma. He realized that suffering does not only come from unpleasant things like being insulted or beaten, but also from clinging to moments of joy or liking. Everything leads to the arising of desire for pleasure, and when this desire is cut off, suffering arises. But if we do not cling, do not hold on, suffering will cease. The Buddha emphasized the Four Noble Truths, of which suffering, dukkha, is the first truth. Elder Punna fully grasped this when facing difficult challenges and chose to cope with a compassionate heart, without resistance. Instead of fear or resentment, he chose to let go and calmly accept everything with wisdom. Lesson on cause and effect and karma. The story also reminds us of the principle of cause and effect. Elder Punna's reaction to misfortune was not random. It was the result of a process of diligent practice, training the mind to be calm and wise. The cause of peace and compassion was planted through many lives, many stages of practice, and resulted in a peaceful and unshaken soul. The actions we perform every day create karma, action, and karma leads to corresponding retributions. If we act with a compassionate mind, wisdom, and non-attachment, then the retribution will be liberation and peace. Conversely, if we act with greed, hatred, and ignorance, suffering will follow suffering. Lesson on the Eightfold Path and the path of practice. Elder Punna's journey is also a journey following the Eightfold Path. He lived with right view, clearly recognizing the impermanent, non-self, and suffering nature of life. He practiced right thought, thinking without hatred, without malice. He acted in accordance with right livelihood and right action, causing no harm to anyone even when treated brutally. Right mindfulness and right concentration helped him achieve a state of mind that was peaceful, not shaken by circumstances. Elder Punna chose to face challenges with diligence and practice, keeping his mind pure and not letting greed, anger, or delusion dominate. As a result, he achieved liberation, attained the three knowledges, and entered nirvana. The story of Elder Punna is a vivid lesson in compassion, patience, and wisdom. In everyday life, we also often face challenges, criticisms, or even unfair treatment. Instead of reacting with anger or blame, we can learn to be calm, compassionate, and let go, as Elder Punna did. Practice a compassionate heart. Let go of the ego to face difficulties with deep understanding of the nature of suffering and impermanence. Focus on doing good, avoiding evil, accumulating good karma, and planting good causes to achieve peace and liberation. Thank you for listening to this story. If you find the story valuable, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel to continue following other meaningful Buddhist stories. Share your thoughts in the comments section. How would you react when facing life's challenges? Can you maintain compassion and peace like Elder Punna?